week 6 in the National Football League because believe it or not, folks, all 14 games, yes, all 14 of them, the favorite won outright. Now, we didn't take two dogs, they did not cover. A couple of dogs did cover. Obviously, Cleveland covering against Philly. You add, and I believe for dogs, that's pretty much it. Was Cleveland with the points against Philly, that huge line, obviously. And other than that, if you took all favorites, you were a winner this week because Bill was barely covering against the Jets last night. We'll get to it on Monday Night Football. We took, of course, Arizona plus 5.5. Was not a good bet from the start. Carolina plus 6.5. It was a good bet in the first half, turned into an ugly second half. And I do think that week 6 in the NFL, with all 14 teams winning outright, 13 favorites covering the spread. It was a weird weekend, yes, just like week 2 was a weird weekend. And we're probably going to get more dogs to cover. But I think, again, the cream of the crop now is rising it up to this league. So San Francisco at Seattle Thursday night. Again, San Francisco was favored by 3.5. You guys know I took the Niners. You guys know my general rule now is to stay away from Thursday night games. I don't love them, unless of course you got the Vikings going to the Rams next Thursday. With the Vikings coming off a huge win against Detroit, I think that could be a letdown spot. This weekend's very interesting because New Orleans got blown out. Now their former coach, Sean Payton, is going to town. Bo Nix did not play well. You know Sean Payton is going to talk about that environment in New Orleans. That's a motivating factor for Payton. That may be a game that I take Thursday night. But again, this game was close in the second half, right? San Francisco was dominating the first half. Brock Purdy looked really good. Deebo Samuel had a big touchdown. George Kittle had a big touchdown to open up the half. It was 23-3. And then on the ensuing kickoff, Seattle got a touchdown return and it pretty much flipped the whole game until Geno Smith threw an interception late. Geno Smith was overthrowing wide receivers all night long. And as I have predicted this year when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks, I said they started 3-0. I said they're not for real. Look at them now. They're 3-3. Now they go to Atlanta for a very difficult game in week 7. They could fall to 3-4, but so could San Francisco because they host Kansas City with Andy Reid coming off a bye. Yes, I know the Niners are on that mini bye. They get a few days to prepare, but Andy Reid off a bye is almost impossible to bet against. San Francisco got destroyed by Kansas City the last time they played in the regular season. Yes, this is a Super Bowl rematch. Yes, San Francisco is going to come in with their hair on fire. Can they beat Kansas City? I don't know. Luckily for them, Arizona also lost. The Rams look too beat up. Now they're going to get a victory this week, or at least they should, at home against Vegas. But to me, this is a concern right now for San Francisco in the second half that they are so good on script in that first half. And then in the second half, their offense has stalled this year for whatever reason. Again, for Seattle, I think they're a good team. I don't think they're a great team. I think Mike McDonald is a defensive coach right now, a little bit too much over his head, and is struggling on that side of the ball. Okay. Caleb Williams played the best game of his NFL career so far. Bears destroyed Jacksonville. Now, I said I just did not want to take this game because of the Jaguars' history in London. That may have been one of the only times that I can recall, even in those days where Jacksonville was miserable, that they got blown out in London. And after that big win against the Colts, you thought, maybe they turned their season around. Nah, Trevor Lawrence is still bad. The offense is still bad. Doug Peterson's on his way out the door. And listen, they play New England this week. And everybody in the sports world was talking about, well, Philadelphia looked bad against Cleveland, which again, they were the only home favorite to not cover this weekend against the Browns. Even in a win, could they fire Nick Sirianni? I think here, even if Jacksonville wins against New England, if it's ugly, Doug Peterson may be out the door coming back from that London trip. The Jaguars seem like they don't really buy into him anymore. The offense, for whatever reason, is out of sync. The defense can't stop a nosebleed, and they switched defensive coordinators this season to try to stop that. Caleb Williams, again, he had all day in the pocket. Did make a bad throw on an interception to DJ Moore. That was like his only bad throw of the night. DJ Moore was wide open in the end zone. Caleb just put too much air underneath the ball, didn't get there in time. I wanted it to be intercepted. But this was the Bears team that I had predicted that I said would make the playoffs at the start of the year. This is the offensive upgrade I was talking about. And seemingly, ever since they got shellacked at Indianapolis in week 3, they have turned around whatever struggles they were. They look like a completely new team offensively. DeAndre Swift getting the bulk of the carries and getting that running game going, getting Cole Kmet also involved at the tight end position to go along with DJ Moore and Roma Dunze has helped Caleb out a ton. Okay. So I know Philly beat the Browns, obviously 20-16, your final. Um, I think, and again, a lot of people in Philadelphia are going to disagree with me on this. They want Nick Sirianni fired. They don't love the fact that he was chirping fans at the end of the game, which obviously is not a great look. But if you know Nick Sirianni, that's sort of who he is. I actually thought that even though the score was close, I mean, the Eagles' defense, which they lost Darius Slay as well on the back end, they're really young back there. You got Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, who came in the slot, obviously replacing Avante Maddox. They're really young back there, and this defense only gave up 9 points because if it wasn't for a Miles Garrett blocked field goal, Philly could have been going into the locker room up 13-3 instead of 10-10, and that's probably a different game. The Browns defensive line, they did a good job shutting down Saquon Barkley, but Jalen Hurts with his two weapons back, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, played the best game he's played since I don't know, maybe the Buffalo game in week 12 a year ago, which, was 12 games ago, or 13 if you count the playoff game. So there's that. We know about the Browns' struggles on offense. There's no need to go over it. They're a 1-5 football team. The team they play the best against, Cincinnati, is coming to town this week, and they are going to get Nick Chubb back. Again, I don't think it matters. I think this team is cooked. I think Deshaun Watson's cooked. I think they're battling New England and Jacksonville, maybe the battle for the number one pick this weekend. Browns are going to be right there in the mix, along with Carolina, for worst team in the NFL this year, along with New England and Jacksonville. It's just at what point do they cut the cord with Deshaun Watson? I kind of think it's going to happen after they lose these games against Cincinnati, Baltimore, and the Chargers, all at home, by the way. They'll drop to 1-8. They'll officially be out of it. They're going to have a bye week, and then they go on the road, and that's when you'll see Jameis Winston. And it's also at New Orleans, I believe, that week 11 contest. Okay, we all circled Ravens Commanders on the calendar. I said I did not love it in terms of the line. I like the Ravens to win. By the way, they go 13-1 in the money line. I should have mentioned that off the top. My only loss in the money line was the Jets last night, which again we will get to. But I had my best money line picking week, arguably of all time. Again, I went with most favorites because I liked the matchups this week. I didn't know about the spreads. I thought there was a chance here Washington could cover. They barely did not. This was a great game throughout. The difference here really was Lamar Jackson. I mean, Washington and Dan Quinn's got a good defense, but again, Washington doesn't see Baltimore. There's a reason why Lamar is now, I think it's 22-1 against the NFC conference in his career. He's just too difficult to defend. And now you add Derrick Henry in that mix, and they got Mark Andrews going a little bit, and you got Isaiah Likely there, and you got Rashad Bateman, and you got Zay Flowers, who had another good game, and there's just a lot of weapons. And when this Ravens offense is humming, and when they're mixing up the run and the pass, they're very hard to stop. I was impressed by Jaden Daniels and what he did, some of the throws he made, the ability to stand in there in the pocket against that Ravens secondary, against that Ravens pass rush, throw some darts, not be afraid to go in there and show people that, hey, this Washington team at 4-2, this is not a fluke. This is a real football team, and I think it's a real building block for the Commanders, who have now cemented themselves in Philadelphia as the top two teams in the NFC East. Okay, I thought Drake May did as best as he could with a terrible offensive line, had a nice throw to Kendrick Bourne for a touchdown. Like you could see potential in that. Drake May threw for more passing touchdowns and more passing yards than Jacoby Brissett had done in a game, at least when it comes to yards and touchdowns total all season long. But Joe Mixon being back for the Texans offense will really help, right? Get CJ Stroud back on balance, the ability to run the football, play action pass off of it. And with Nico Collins down for Houston, Tank Dell stepped up back into the role he had last year as that number two wide receiver role. He looked really good in the offense. Houston takes care of business. They dispatched New England 41-21. I should have taken Houston -7 in hindsight, but again, the problem with this week was we had some big lines. And historically, this season, we've had big lines. The dogs were covering at rapid rate. That completely flipped this week. So I've been betting more on data this week. Again, or this year, I should say. 3 for 5 in best bets. We're 17 for 30 this year in best bets, which last year through this time we were 19 for 30 in best bets. So not the end of the world. I wish I would have taken that in hindsight. Game I did take for betting was Indianapolis -1.5. I said, Tennessee coming off a bye. I thought this would be a close game throughout. Did not know who would start for the Colts, whether it be Anthony Richardson, which he did not. Joe Flacco did start, and Flacco had a good game. Didn't have the best game in the world, especially for Joe Flacco 2024 standards. But I said Will Levis would throw the game-ending interception, and Indianapolis would cover because of it. What do you know? Fourth quarter, close game, 20-17, 3-point game. Will Levis does what Will Levis does. Nailed it. The Titans are getting a new quarterback at the end of this year, and for Indianapolis, after starting 1-2, they're now 3-3. But again, Joe Flacco is 1-1, so Anthony Richardson 2-2. Anthony Richardson, we're gonna have to see more spark out of him. We're gonna have to see more easy completions because his running ability is off the charts, and he really does make that Colts offense dynamic. A lot easier to stop Jonathan Taylor, who returned in this game, and that run game. But Flacco is more accurate right now down the field. So I got this game wrong. I thought those pesky Arizona Cardinals would come into Green Bay and give them a fight. I thought Green Bay was struggling through, their first 5 games of the season, getting off to a good start. This was Jordan Love's best game of the season. He had an incredible throw to Romeo Doubs off his back foot late in the third quarter when it looked like Arizona could get back in the game to pretty much put the dagger in it there. Green Bay wins it 34-13. I feel like Arizona is going to be one of these teams that one week they play bad, one week they play good, one week they play bad, one week they play good. And for Green Bay now, we know the NFC North has the top 4 scoring differentials in the league. We already talked about Chicago. Minnesota's on a bye. We're going to talk about the Lions just toying with Dallas. And then you got Green Bay. It's possible one of these teams is not making the playoffs. And again, I predicted before the year this was the toughest division in football. And with not a lot of division games happening to the back half of the season, this thing is going to be spread out on the gridiron. They're going to beat each other up. And so it's important to get as many conference and non conference wins right now in that division as you can. How about that wild Bucks and Saints game where it was 27-24 at halftime? Baker Mayfield for 3 interceptions. And then that Campbell kid came in for Tampa and just ran the hell out of the ball. New Orleans couldn't stop him in the second half. Tampa Bay in the second half just decided to blitz the hell out of Spencer Rattler after he had a great debut in the first half. Again, New Orleans defensive coach Dennis Allen, and they could not stop the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like at all. This game was at halftime, and most of the other games were nearing the fourth quarter. It was a wild, crazy game, back and forth, lots of turnovers in the first half, one play touchdowns, and then Tampa Bay settled down. They got to Rattler, and Baker Mayfield just unloaded the likes of Godwin, Mike Evans, and again, that run game was incredible for Tampa. And I had said when the Saints started 2-0 that, it may have looked for real after what they did to Dallas, but we had to wait and see of what their offense looked like against Philadelphia in week 3. And ever since then, their offense has looked like, quite frankly, back to the old New Orleans Saints. This was the Saints team I predicted before the start of the year, 2-0 to 2-4, and now 2 games behind Atlanta, who got a massive win against Carolina. Again, struggled a little bit there in the first half, but Bijan Robinson, his first multi-career touchdown game. And in the second half, Carolina just couldn't stop Atlanta. Once Atlanta got going, those first couple drives, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, even getting Kyle Pitts involved, Carolina could get no pass rush. And I think Dave Canales is doing whatever he can with Andy Dalton, who obviously threw a couple bad interceptions there late in the game. Carolina knows their formula to win the game. Run the football with Chuba Hubbard. Don't turn the football over. Stay on the offense side of the field as much as you can with short passes, screens, running the ball, etc. Because their defense, a lot like Jacksonville, cannot stop a nosebleed. And so Carolina's a bad football team. Atlanta wins. Tampa wins. Both in dominating fashion. Again, I took Carolina plus 6.5. I took Arizona plus 5.5. I owe those bets on me because those two bets just look awful. Things are about to implode in Las Vegas, and with the injury Detroit suffered to Aiden Hutchinson, Max Crosby potentially could be on his way to Detroit. Devontae Adams could be out of town here pretty soon. And what's funny is the players, Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, that Raiders leadership, they loved Antonio Pierce so much. He was the substitute teacher, right? Let's get him the job. He deserves it. Yeah. Mistake. The Raiders are like, we made the mistake by not bringing in Rich Bisaccia. Now we have to double down. All situations are not the same. When you go into a football season with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as your starting quarterbacks, you deserve this if you're the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, Brock Bowers is a nice tight end. I don't care. You needed a quarterback. This is why I said you're going to finish last in this division. I like your talent. Your defense is a mess. Your offensive line is a mess. Justin Fields played pretty clean football. Steelers got back to being Steelers. They took care of business. Justin Fields did not turn the football over. TJ Watt dominated this game. They got a couple forced fumbles. They got another interception as well. Their defense really leading into points for their offense. Steelers dominate Vegas 32-13. Okay, so this game was not close in the first half. Denver made a late rally in the second half, but the Chargers coming off a bye, and obviously Jim Harbaugh with his health issues flared up, had to lead the game in the first quarter. He came back, but J.K. Dobbins running the hell out of the football. Justin Herbert off play action, throwing the football down the field. Chargers looked like they were pissed off after the way they lost to Pittsburgh in Kansas City before their bye week in week 3 and week 4. They look healthy. They look ready. And now they got an interesting game, right? Jim Harbaugh against Jonathan Gannon. Primetime, ESPN Plus exclusive. Monday Night Football. Arizona struggling, coming off a bad loss. Again, this is a spot where Arizona plays well. I feel like this is an even game. It's an interesting game. We'll have to see if Arizona can stop the run. Other than that, Chargers are getting to 4-2. And on Jerry Jones' 82nd birthday, he suffered the worst loss the Dallas Cowboys have ever suffered in the history of their franchise, especially at home. The Lions are running that offensive lineman. They're running again laterals to offensive lineman. They're running the football down the throat of the Dallas Cowboys, who only managed to score by the way of 3 field goals by Brandon Aubrey. Dak Prescott threw 2 horrible interceptions, and Detroit took out their frustration from last year's, obviously the ineligible stuff with the lineman reporting. Yeah, they wanted to prove a statement to the Dallas Cowboys. We're better than you. We don't like you. You're going to take this ass whooping on the chin, and you are going to like it. And there's nothing that Dallas can do. And folks, again, I think I know this NFC East pretty well. It's obviously my division with me being an Eagles fan. I said going into the year, Eagles and Commanders are the two best teams in the division. Dallas is a CeeDee Lamb pop gun offense that will not be able to run the football. And if Dak Prescott has to throw 50 times, it's going to be a long year for Dallas. And you look at this stretch now for the Dallas Cowboys. These are their next several, shout out to Jawinski from Survivor 46, opponents. After this bye week, they have to go to San Francisco. Well, we know they can't handle San Francisco. That's a loss. To Atlanta. Yes, they've had success in their career against Kirk Cousins, but that was the Kirk Cousins in Minnesota and Washington. This is the best offensive line Atlanta has ever had, arguably. Then you got your home game against the rival Philadelphia Eagles, who recently have struggled, especially in Dallas. But Philadelphia here, if they beat the Giants, they beat the Jaguars in week 9, they could be gaining some momentum. Then you got to play the Texans. CJ Stroud indoors, Joe Mixon in that running game, walk out. Then you got to play the Commanders. And I believe that game's in Washington. And Dan Quinn coming back to Dallas, he's going to be motivated to beat his former team. So the way I look at it right now, Dallas is 3-3, and you got 3-4, potentially you could be 3-6, 3-7. God forbid if you can get out of this for the first 10, 4-6, you feel like it's a win. And so again, from that perspective for Dallas, their goose may be cooked here as this stretch over the next 5, 6 weeks is a brutal, brutal stretch. And the Giants, who they play on Thanksgiving, almost beat them if they just would have got the ball in the end zone. The Lions, they look really good, right? They're getting back to running the football. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, who even got a touchdown pass on a great flea-flicker call by Ben Johnson. The Lions were telling Dallas they own them. And now they're going to look to prove that they are the class of the division this week when they go into Minnesota. That game will be difficult. And the loss of Aiden Hutchinson for Detroit, I think, is huge. He leads the league this year in sacks. He's got double the amount of production of any other Detroit Lion on that defensive line. We will have to see how this Lions defense, how Aaron Glenn coordinates it without Aiden Hutchinson. Because I'm being super honest here. We saw Pittsburgh without TJ Watt, what it brings to their defense. Does Aiden Hutchinson have that kind of impact for the Lions? If they lose him, is that the difference between the Lions being a Super Bowl contender and being a playoff contender? Okay, that Cincinnati Giants game was obviously ugly. We got the cover with the Chase Brown touchdown late. Thank you, Chase Brown. They have an over 500 winning week, 3 for 5 in best bets. The Bengals offense obviously struggled. Outside of that rushing touchdown, the only other touchdown they scored was the Joe Burrow touchdown run, which cost me a win in fantasy. Ugh. Giants missed 2 field goals. There's a lot of missed field goals at MetLife Stadium this weekend. Ugly, ugly game. Giants defense is good. We talked about even without Avon Thibodeau, they got Brian Burns, they got Dexter Lawrence. Up front is the biggest strength of their football team overall. They're protecting Daniel Jones better than they did a year ago. Daniel Jones is getting the football out. And now that they're going to get Malik Neighbors against Philadelphia, very interesting game in MetLife. Eagles have historically owned the Giants, though not last year, though when Philadelphia played them both times, they were in their supernatural funk. I don't think the Giants are a very good football team, but I don't think they're awful. I think they're better than New England. I think they're better than Cleveland. I think they're better than Carolina. And I think they're better than Jacksonville. So that's where I'm at. And then my only loss that I picked last weekend in the money line, Buffalo. I had them losing to the Jets last night. And obviously, Bass missed the field goal. They missed an extra point. Aaron Rodgers gets the Hail Mary. Other than that, outside of some great throws to Lazard and the one to Garrett Wilson in the back of the end zone for a touchdown, this game was just a flag fest. It was hard to watch, especially in the fourth quarter. Almost 200 yards combined of total penalties. It was a flashback to the Cowboys-Giants game, Thursday Night Football all over again. But here's the bottom line. We know this is Aaron Rodgers' franchise now, even with Jeff Ulbrich making the move to go to Todd Downing as a play caller. which I did see more motion last night from the Jets offense. It looked like they brought in some more modernization of the offense with down and calling the plays. This is on Aaron. And the Jets defense that have been so good under Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich calling the defense. Well, now Jeff Ulbrich, along with calling the defense and coaching duties to his plate. And I know Robert Saleh was back wherever he was in New York, laughing his ass off at this because that was one of the few times with an interim head coach. Again, I talked about it on Thursday. The interim head coach, like the great Colin Cowherd said this week on his show, is like a substitute teacher. First couple weeks, everybody's happy, the rules are loose, everybody plays well, and then the truth comes out. The Jets, who now have to go to Pittsburgh, who their offense is not very good. Josh Allen is obviously very good, and even without James Cook last night, Buffalo got the run game going extremely well. The Jets got shredded, and that was maybe one of the worst defensive performance the Jets have had in a long time, even though they gave up only 23 points. To me, that is a concern. Can Jeff Ulbrich figure out how to call the defense and manage the head coaching duties? Because their defense did not look the same last night. And those players loved Robert Saleh and they like Ulbrich. And again, by all accounts, Ulbrich is respected very high up in the organization. Shanahan and McVay and those guys wanted to hire him as a defensive coordinator before Saleh did. So I don't know. This was a huge game for the Jets. If they win the game, they're in first place. Now they're 2 games back. They lost the tiebreaker, and Buffalo is on their way to another AFC East crown. A little bit surprising because, again, I thought they'd take a little bit of a step back this year, but Buffalo finally got back to, even without James Cook, running the football. And that was the difference between Buffalo's first 3 games of the year and their prior 2 this game against the Jets.
Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.